It was raining again. Dr. Eliza Thornton pressed her forehead against the cold window of the coach, watching the black trees bend in the wind like mourning figures. Fog blurred the countryside as the bus growled up the narrow roads leading to Eldergrove, a place she had only read about in footnotes, obscure journals, and the hushed whispers of archivists too afraid to dig further. Eldergrove. A village not found on modern maps, but buried in weathered pages of 17th-century ecclesiastical records and the personal diaries of men driven mad by its silence. She wasn't here for the scenery. Eliza was a folklorist, an anthropologist by degree but an explorer of cultural ghosts by passion. Her specialty? Obscure folklore, especially the kind that ended in disappearances, and no place whispered louder in the academic shadows than Eldergrove. The driver, a man with a neck like a tree stump and eyes like river stones, didn't speak as he dropped her off, just nodded toward the mist-covered village. There was no terminal, just a cracked milestone jutting from the mud like a gravestone. Eldergrove was waiting. The village greeted her with silence. Thatch-roofed cottages crouched beside stone paths, their windows shuttered as though they feared the light might bring something worse than the dark. The fog pooled like water in the alleyways. Somewhere, a dog barked, then yelped, then silence again. She walked to the inn, the weird mare, as her coat soaked through. The woman behind the desk, a gray-haired figure with watery blue eyes and fingers that trembled too much for arthritis, barely looked at her. "You're not a Thornton," the woman said, more accusation than greeting. "I am. Dr. Eliza Thornton. I booked a room last week. A Thornton was here once, a long time ago. I'm not related, just here for research." The old woman stared at her with such intent that Eliza momentarily doubted her own ancestry. Then she nodded and handed over a brass key attached to a leather tag, stained with what might have been ink or blood. Room 4. "The fog here forgets," the woman muttered as Eliza walked away. By the third day, Eliza had spoken to no one but the innkeeper. The villagers either vanished into homes as she approached, or simply stared, quiet, pale, watchful. At the church, she found old records locked in a stone drawer beneath the pulpit. With gloves and care, she pulled out brittle pages filled with names, curses, and diagrams she'd only seen in medieval occult manuscripts. There was one phrase that appeared again and again, scratched in different hands across centuries. "The hollowing comes when the fog forgets who we are." It was a phrase steeped in dread. The hollowing wasn't a creature, not exactly. It was a presence, a process, an erasure. Villagers recorded children going missing, voices heard from empty fields, and bodies found with their eyes wide, faces blank, souls scooped out like the inside of a gourd. The fog was always present. So was the silence afterward. Eliza found the well on the 4th day. It sat at the edge of the moor, a black-mouthed relic surrounded by stones etched with spiral runes. Ravens gathered there, and something about their arrangement made her skin crawl. They weren't looking at her. They were watching the well. She approached. Inside, the shaft seemed bottomless. Then she heard it. A voice. "Eliza." She stumbled back, looked around. No one. "Eliza." The voice came again, dry and echoing, like a child underwater. She dropped a stone into the shaft and heard nothing. No splash, no bottom, just breath. That night, her dreams were filled with fog, and inside it, something moved with limbs too long and eyes too empty. Eliza waited until the church was empty. Reverend Calloway was a skeletal man with too many keys, and she had watched him each morning as he unlocked a hidden door behind the altar. On the 5th night, as the fog turned the churchyard into a grave of stars, she slipped inside, lantern in hand, and found the latch. It opened with a groan that could have been a scream. The stairwell beneath twisted like a spine, descending into damp stone darkness. Carvings lined the walls, spirals, horns, a symbol that looked like a face with no mouth. She reached the chamber at the bottom and gasped. It was circular, stone-walled, with ancient bone fragments piled in corners. In the center stood an altar made of interlocking jawbones, and atop it lay a codex, thick as a brick and bound in something that might have been skin. She opened it. The script was archaic, written in a blend of Latin, Brythonic, and something older. Diagrams of the human soul, segmented and labeled. Notes on ritual hollowing, a process of emptying a person until only a shell remained. There were ritual instructions, sacrifices, cycles. At the final page, a chilling sketch. A man-shaped shadow, fog curling out of his chest. Children kneeling at its feet, eyes rolled back. Beneath the drawing was a single phrase. The fog does not steal. It trades. Eliza demanded answers. She cornered Reverend Calloway in the graveyard the next morning. His reaction wasn't anger, it was resignation. "You found the crypt," he said. "You've been performing the ritual every decade. The hollowing takes one child, and you let it." His voice was distant. "We bargain. If we don't, it takes more. How many have you sacrificed?" He didn't answer, just stared at the fog curling along the gravestones. "It needs reminding," he whispered, "that we are its own, that we remember." She realized then what the phrase had meant. The fog forgets who you are, and when it forgets, you disappear. The hollowing wasn't a creature. It was the absence of memory, a presence that devours identity. And the ritual? It wasn't just appeasement. It was an anchor, a way of telling the fog, "This is us, we belong, we remember each other." Without the ritual, the village would be unmoored, lost to the mist. That night, Eliza dreamt of a field of empty houses, doors swinging open, and voices echoing from the fog. "I was someone once." Eliza didn't sleep the next night. Not really. She pored over the codex, translating what she could by candlelight. Her fingers trembled as she reached the final pages, where a counter-ritual had been noted, but heavily crossed out in rust-colored ink. A warning was scrawled across the top in Latin, "Memini e Piraeus." Remember, and be undone. But she read on. The ritual was not a banishment. It was a reckoning, a way to confront the hollowing, to call it out of the mist and force it to reckon with the souls it had taken. If the ritual failed, all memory would unravel, not just hers, the village's, the world's. It required a binding circle of salt and bone, a mirror older than the mist, a personal memory offered as bait, and blood, always blood. The village was silent that night. Eliza marked the old crossroads with chalk and bones from the crypt. She crushed ash into lines, whispered the names of every child recorded in the hollowing ledger, and opened a cut across her palm. In the mirror placed at the center, fog began to swirl. Then, it came. It did not walk. It bloomed from the fog, limbs rising like black branches, a face like a melted wax mask, no eyes, no mouth. And yet, it spoke. "What is your name?" The voice came from inside her head. Eliza trembled but stood tall. "You know it. You took others who bore it. You've taken pieces of us all." The creature leaned forward. Its form flickered. Then she saw it. Her father's face, her mother's laugh, her own younger voice, repeating a memory only she could know. "You gave me these," it whispered. "Give me more." The mirror cracked. Her blood hissed as it hit the circle. Eliza reached inside herself, pulled forward her clearest memory. Her mother brushing her hair beside a golden window. She offered it. The creature paused. The wind howled. The fog pulsed. "You remember. Too well," it said. Then, the world exploded in light. Eliza awoke at dawn. The mirror was shattered. The bones were gone. And the fog lifted. For the first time, sunlight spilled into Eldergrove. The streets were quiet, but not empty. People emerged from their homes, blinking like they'd been born anew, eyes wide, children crying for mothers who finally remembered their names. The church bell rang once, then twice. Its voice no longer drowned. Eliza stood in the square, watching the villagers gather. She expected blame, accusation. Instead, they thanked her. Something had changed. The hollowing was not destroyed, but it was bound again. Not by ritual, but by remembrance. She left that evening, suitcase in hand, fog behind her. Years later, Eliza would give a lecture about lost villages and folkloric trauma. She would mention Eldergrove, but no one in the audience would remember it. Even her research notes would seem faded, because the hollowing was still out there, watching, for the next time someone forgets. And somewhere, a whispering voice curls from a well beneath a broken moor. I was someone once.